Doing well, doing
Good.
well. How about you?
Well, great. So we just we're excited. I've been listening to some of the events. It's kind of a weird week. This is usually the week where it's CES, right? And I've been probably going to CES. Oh God, I'm old, but I think it's probably 25 plus years, and it's just weird to not be at
Hmm.
CES this week. So I'm glad that we're at least doing some things for the community to fill them in on certain things that are going on in the media world and in the world of, in your case, finance and banking. And so we're excited that we still can bring people information during this time of COVID.
Yeah, well, what I've seen so far, when I had a break in my calendar today, I dialed in. I saw a little bit of Fernando. I
Yep.
saw the CMO from Party City, and so looks like a great event with some incredible brand innovators, which is really exciting.
Yeah. General Mills, the last one, is near and dear to my heart
Hmm.
since I used to run sales for Nickelodeon, and General Mills once, was probably our biggest advertiser when I was there over the years. So,
Huh.
uh, I'm always impressed by what they do across everything in terms of teaching kids and learning and obesity and all that, and being on the forefront of great companies. So, big fan of General Mills.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about you. So first of all, before we start, right, I'm covering my card because I don't want anybody to steal the numbers and then get into debt. But I wanted to let everybody know is not only am I interviewing you today, but I'm also a customer. So I wanted to show everybody my card,
Please
and
don't take his data, but
that's
we
why I have my
very much
finger on
appreciate that. We love our customers, so very much appreciate that.
Yes, we're big fans, and we spoke the other day, and we were really impressed that you started at Arizona State, right? Then went to Northwestern, and then went to the International School, right, of Finance in Paris.
Yeah, International School of Management. Yes.
Management, yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I love to learn. I've actually, I think getting out of undergrad, I don't know about everybody else, but what I really loved when I went to Northwestern and I went to the integrated communications program in the journalism school, what I loved about it is I wanted to be there. I was so excited to learn. It was something that I was just so fascinated by. And so, yeah, I'd love to be on that continued learning journey.
that's terrific. So let's start off with a couple of questions. Of course, the big topic is the pandemic, and it continues to be. Tell us a little bit how things have changed as a new role during the pandemic for you guys, from before, from everything from the messaging to what you're offering people to the creative, et cetera. Like, how are things and how you look at things changed over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, dramatically. I think, I'll give a little bit of context in terms of my role because I'm in a relatively new role. So I think I'm also in a bit of an interesting situation. We know that we have a lot of people at TD who are coming in who, have never met people in person. And I happen to be a little bit of one of those people. I knew some people, but so just, and by way of context, my role, I've been with TD about 6 years. I was leading global brand and customer experience for the first the majority of my time there. And 4 months ago, I took over the US CMO role, but also retained my global brand role, which I love because I'm very passionate about brand. And, so it's been, I mean, the pandemic has changed everything, including the way we work and the way we interact. And I've been on the front line of that sort of, trying to figure out virtually, how do you learn? Even though had been with the bank for a long time, Canada and the US don't, always overlap from a business perspective. So I had a big learning curve. So, literally I've done these kinds of meetings, been, face to face, but on video with I did 60 one-on-ones in my first probably 3 months. So, the pandemic has changed everything in terms of even just how we do our jobs, how we connect with people, how we build relationships. For me, relationships are so incredibly important. And it's just not the same, right? You can't say, hey, let's go have lunch, or you don't just see somebody in a meeting and catch up on something. It's much more deliberate. It's much more, really understanding how to build those connections. I don't think that's that different from a customer perspective either. And, it really making sure that you really understand, what a customer's going through, what they need during this time, and creating that connection, whether that's physically, whether it's virtually, via, through digital, et cetera. I think, boy, the pandemic has just changed everything, and some things for the better. I think things that we will all take and move forward, but it's definitely a different environment.
Is your messaging in your media changed too? Like, I know a lot of companies in the first few months of the pandemic were doing a lot of COVID messaging, and then now
Right.
there's been a transition away from that kind of messaging. And I wonder, have you guys followed the same suit? Like, did you start off more of a COVID message, and now you're going back to a general message?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. One of the things that we stood up almost immediately, and in fact, it was, while we were still in the office, but starting to realize, that things were changing around us, and, the world would look a little bit different. We thought at the time for a couple of months, here we are a year later. Our insights, I led the insights team at that point, and we've got some brilliant people on that team who really said, you know what, we need to put tracking in the market. And so we started tracking consumer sentiment, consumer needs, consumer expectations, before COVID was in kind of full force and everyone was at home. And so we used that tracking, that regular tracking, we're still running some of it today, to really understand consumer needs and expectations and what they wanted to hear, because the mind shift was changing, as you said, so much from, at the very start, where there was a view, don't talk to me about products, don't try to sell me something. I want to know how you're going to help me do my digital banking. I want to know, how you're going to keep me, safe and secure, but able to bank, and so forth. And also a real focus, even from our customers, on our colleagues, the people who are working in our branches or our stores. And, people really wanted to know, what are you doing to keep them safe? How are you contributing to the community? So I think early in that cycle, there really wasn't a lot of appetite from a consumer perspective to hear other messages. And so we really had to adjust kind of what we did, how we did it. And as you say, over time, there became a bit of a tipping point where people were like, okay, we're in this for the long haul. And B, there was a bit of I think a real sea of sameness in terms of COVID messaging, and, everybody putting out messages, but not really talking about, specifics. And I think there was a turning point. And so really understanding that, and then knowing, okay, consumers actually are interested. They want to know more about banking. How are we going to help them through this time? And so that was crucially important. The other thing that I would say is just the need for empathy. And particularly, in our world where, we track a metric in Canada on financial health. And so we look at financially healthy, kind of financially coping, and financially vulnerable. And in May of 2019, the percentage of people who were in the financially vulnerable category was about 19%. That went to 38% a year later. And so that told us everything we needed to know in terms of how do we support our customers, who are all at very different, points, as they navigate this. And, it really, so that empathy component of the messaging was crucial.
So I know you handle both, global title, both Canada and the US. Mm-hmm. And up in Canada, the COVID cases and corona in general has been not as severe as the United States. Two things. is the messaging different in Canada than the US? And is the whole banking experience different in Canada versus the US right now in terms of the ability to be face-to-face, et cetera?
I would say they've been quite consistent. And so, I think you can look at cases, but you can also look at the actions that have been taken. And so, for example, in Ontario, I think they just went back into a full lockdown again. And so, with essential services, and banking has been an essential service pretty much throughout. And that was true both in the US and in Canada. So there were definitely have been more similarities than differences from the market perspective. The US had, something that was quite unique, and that we have a lot of drive-throughs for our branches or our stores, and in Canada that didn't exist. But what we were able to do in both of our markets, we introduced things like virtual queues. So what we knew is that even when, our stores or our branches were able to be open, that people didn't necessarily want to come and stand in line or be in the, actually in the physical premise. So we introduced this kind of virtual queue. In the US, we've actually checked in 1 million people that way through the pandemic. So people really, really appreciated that. So I would say, and then on both sides of the border, again, a real focus on how do we get people up and running in digital and get people to adopt digital. And so that was just a huge focus. TD is, we are an omni-channel company, but people love to come into our branches and into our stores. And so we've built our brands on both sides of the border as really building relationships. And so getting people, really enabled digitally was just a huge focus so that people could do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, you guys have been great. I know a couple of times when I had to do some banking, I would sign up and then they would come actually get you in the car and tell you to come on in or that was mostly in the beginning. But we do most of our banking now digitally. And
right.
So that like leads me into the next one, like, being a customer, right? There's a lot of choices, and being a regional bank, how do you break through the clutter and how do you distinguish yourself from one bank to another when there's many choices?
Yeah, I think we all go through that. We all look at our competitive environment and really think about, number one, what's true to our company, but also how do we differentiate? So, the first thing that I would start with, I think for a TD, it really starts quite, at the higher level, which is our purpose. And our purpose is around, our purpose is to enrich the lives of our customers, our colleagues, and our communities. And what's really interesting is, during the pandemic, which I think tested everybody in terms of, do we have the right purpose? Are we, do we now wake up and know what we need to do? And at TD, what really struck me is people knew that we needed to understand, the needs of our customers and how to work with them, our communities, and our colleagues. And so there was a real, clear focus on those three stakeholder groups. But what I would say is that, so we have the purpose, which is around enriching lives. But to your point, how do you differentiate yourselves in a competitive environment? Canada and the US are very, very different. So while we enrich lives, and that is at the top of the house, our brand promise is quite different because the competitive environment is totally different. How we've grown up as a brand is totally different. The longevity in the market is quite different. So if I focus on the US, our proposition in the US, you might know us, you probably, as a customer, you probably know us as our longstanding, we have a legacy retail convenience proposition. A part of our tagline is we are America's most convenient bank. And so that's really been driven from quite a lot from the retail organization. But a couple of years ago, we said, we really need to evolve from where we are, and we need to be, we need to evolve to modern convenience, to really driving an exceptional, legendary customer experience, and to, really ingraining ourselves in the communities. All things we had done, but we couched that in our new brand proposition, which is unexpectedly human. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we knew is we saw a statistic that 74% of consumers in the US actually think of their banking relationship as purely transactional. And so our aim was really to challenge that, and has been to challenge that. We've done that for decades, but, really take that to the next level and talk to being unexpectedly human, no matter how you interact with us.
That's great. So I'm going to use the big word, 4-letter word, data, right?
Yes.
Data is controlling everything now, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the way we target people on TV to the way you target customers, right, in the banking world. Tell us how data basically helps create your strategy moving forward, and has that data changed what you do during COVID?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it really changed what we do during COVID. I think that data and it enables our business, absolutely, and it continues to do that. I think the need for insights, as I mentioned, was probably, the appetite was, people had an insatiable appetite for insights and data during COVID internally, to make sure that we were doing the right things. But, I think of how we use data, like many companies, it's so important. And if I think about the fundamental from a marketing perspective, if I put that hat on, however you're marketing to somebody, however you are interacting with one of our customers, at the end of the day, to be relevant and meaningful and salient with that customer, you need to understand them, and and data helps us to be able to personalize and tailor our offerings, and to get, the old, from, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, right, right product, right person, right offer, right place. And that hasn't really changed. But I think the number of channels and how you reach customers and the ability to truly personalize has changed dramatically. But at the end of the day, data fuels all of that. And so we are very much on a personalization journey, when we do segmentation and those sorts of things, but ultimately, particularly in digital marketing and those kinds of things, really understanding where is somebody in their journey, how do we engage with them in a way that is relevant and meaningful to them.
And that data and what's going on in the world, has that also changed the channels by which you market? Is, using linear versus digital versus social? Like, how is that helping you create your strategy for where and how you message people?
Yeah, we really focus on the full funnel. And so we do use, we use a variety of channels. We still use TV. I think one of the things that has been, pleasantly surprising to me is just how far addressable TV has come in the US. So that you can really target some more effectively your consumers through TV. But we use, a variety of channels so that we are there when somebody is considering us, and we are with them, right, with them as they come inside. We really leverage our own channels quite a lot as well, and making sure that, we're following a customer on their journey and that their journey is consistent. So I wouldn't say, I think it hasn't changed as much as just exploded in terms of the sheer number of channels that we have access to. I would say that we've very much been, building and enhancing our digital marketing capabilities, which, we know that that's how people are, they're searching and so forth today. That's critical. But we also are still deep believers in, experiential marketing. We have a team of people in the US who, go up and down our footprint from Maine to Florida, who are in our markets, who are doing community work, who are, engaging with our local customers and that type of thing. So we use a variety of channels for different reasons.
Right. So one question I would love to ask is look ahead the next 6 months, what products are you guys going to focus on? Has that changed or, again, with everything going on, and ultimately crystal ball, as things start to get better, we hope, if this vaccine rolls out. So the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and are you having contingency plans for if, things start getting back to normal, more normal, that you guys would change some of your product offerings? So, what is the short term and a little bit long term of your products?
Yeah, for sure. The first thing I would say is I think we have a pretty broad suite of products, and I know we have a broad suite of products from a banking perspective. So I would say we're focusing less on kind of what is the product. Actually have a couple of quite exciting product launches coming that, unfortunately, timing wise, I'm not quite at liberty to talk about yet. But where we're really focused is on customer journeys, understanding the customer's journey, their experience through, with us as they go through those journeys, and making sure that TD is there to support them and that they have a seamless, legendary experience as they navigate the bank and do what they're trying to do. So that move to customer is critically important. And again, data will help us fuel, as a particular customer goes through that journey, what product is relevant for them, what's the right product for them. So product clearly, plays a very, very key role. We are really focused in a couple of areas. One is one of the things that we know from the pandemic is really just this need for guidance and advice from our customers. They are looking to their bank. They want to know that we are with them and by their side. And that could be an individual customer, it could be a small business customer. And so those are, as I think about standing up, not standing up from scratch, but really building on propositions like, advice and making sure that we are there to guide our customers. That's crucially important. And then the third thing that we would focus on going forward very much is innovation. And I think the one thing that this pandemic has really done is it's really spurred innovation around, customer needs that have been changing rapidly. So I'll give you an example. In the US, we launched curbside debit, and we were the first bank to do that. So we were, looking at what was going on in grocery stores and in the retail environment, and thinking, and I say we, it was my team who is brilliant and who thought of, boy, we can learn something from there. And our customers at that point in time that were, they weren't quite ready to come into the lobby, and so the ability to have curbside debit card pickup, because typically when you need your debit card, you need it like that day, was just a great innovation. And the ability to deliver on our promise of being unexpectedly human. And so, as we look to the future, our aim is to really focus on innovation in the customer experience that really builds on our whole proposition around unexpectedly human.
You mentioned before, right, it becomes harder, right, without the personal connection, the face-to-face connection. Are you guys doing anything unique in that space in terms of making sure that you continue your relationships with people, that we don't lose that personal connection during this time when some people still are worried about coming in the lobby?
Yeah, I think we believe that you can deliver unexpectedly human, not just from a personal perspective. And so, there's so much that we do. I heard the person from General Mills talking about, what all they're doing from a sponsorship perspective. And so even things like that, the ability to create, virtual events in this environment, to connect with people in ways that are, important to them. I think people really need a diversion on occasion from what we're all going through. And so, we've tried to find those kind of ways to really keep the connection. And then certainly, digital adoption and really getting people, in it to be very comfortable transacting and working with us from a digital perspective. I saw a McKinsey statistic that said that digital adoption actually vaulted 2 years forward in 8 weeks. And we hear that, consumers really will stick with that. And not all of them, but a third of them who have really increased their usage will continue to do that. But we also know that at the end of the day, people want an omni experience. They want to be able to come in and they want to sit across from you on occasion. And sometimes they want something really quick and easy. And we want to be there with them in their channel of choice.
We still, some of us still feel like that personal handing the check and, versus you watch my kids, they just do everything electronically. And, sometimes we feel like, who's seeing that? And so is there a way you message different age groups with different messages? Because, older people, and I'll put myself in that range, CBS watcher, and then younger people are much more comfortable with doing their banking electronically than older people might be.
Yeah, yes, we do actually, depending on where we are, what environment, what's the media, we will absolutely tailor our message to the particular market. Again, by using things like dynamic creative optimization, you can also get pretty smart with who you're delivering what creative to, so that when you see it, it feels like it's targeted to you. So, I would say absolutely. The one thing that we found is a bit of a misnomer is that when people think, what, younger people are never going to want to come into a branch. And so that's going to die on the vine and everybody's going to be doing digital in the short term. We talk to a lot of people through our insights team, and what we hear is, for the right things, when they're looking for advice, when there's something complex, they want to sit across, they need somebody who's going to walk them through that. And so that becomes really important. How we use the branches in our stores will probably change over time. So, hopefully over time, people, like you said, nobody comes in to deposit a check. Every time I still see my daughter's pay her paycheck, I'm like, did she actually deposit this? Like, that tells you how old I am. But I get nervous that she's leaving money sitting around. She's like, Mom, are you kidding? I do think we don't, over time, we would hope that people start using digital for those solutions, but come in when they really need to talk to somebody and get guidance and advice.
So the fintech world is has a lot of players in it. Mm-hmm. How do you see yourself inside that, and how do you position yourself versus some of those other companies?
I think, the first thing that I would say is we have a really broad competitive set, particularly in the US. That was, I always knew that being in Canada, but Canada has 6 very large banks that really dominate the market. And then you come to the US and, there are tens of thousands of different kinds of financial institutions. Even in our footprint, we're competing with the big globals, the large nationals, the regional players, and certainly fintechs. As I think about fintechs, and what you hear is that, they really come into the value chain and they find a pain point and they really deliver, they focus on that pain point and they bring an offering to market. So, we never, ever take for granted what somebody might do in our space and how they might disrupt our space. We try to learn from them as we do from our other competitors, regardless of who they are, in terms of what they're doing. But I think surely there's a role, and on occasion, we work with some fintechs as well. And there's definitely a role. They're bringing forth some capabilities that are quite interesting. We will continue to differentiate through that, the whole ecosystem of banking.
So is geotargeting something that also is important to you, since you span up and down the East Coast, right? From Maine to Florida, mm-hmm. Like the messaging, does it change by region?
Yeah, on occasion, our messaging actually does change. We really focus on kind of a personal delivery in our local markets. We've got, high priority markets and, frankly, different brand health metrics, market by market. In some cases, we might have a thin store network. And so, we go to market differently in that market. In other cases, we might be on every corner. And so our presence is different. And so we really spend a lot of time. We have market presidents who, and then as I mentioned earlier, we have a field marketing team in the market with the market presidents. And so we're constantly looking at what does the local market need? And, if you think about commercial and small business and those sorts of things, what you need in Florida versus what you need in New York could be 2 very, very different things. So geography is really important. Again, just making the connection that in Canada, less so. There are probably more diversity across the markets, but not, you're able to market more nationally.
So we heard earlier today, General Mills, again, one of the companies I admire because I've worked with them. Mm-hmm. Talk to me a little bit about companies that inspire you and that you take maybe even some direction from, and you try to institute some of that direction into your own management style?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I have to say that probably the one that always comes to my mind is Dove. I just love what Dove does and their whole campaign around real beauty. I think, when you start to look at who really came out very early on with a very purpose-driven message, I think Dove did that when they came out with their real beauty campaign. I absolutely thought it was so powerful what they did this time with first responders and showing people, in the hospitals with their masks and, being tired, but that being the face of beauty today. I just think I always look for things that have great stretch, and they can stretch across all sorts of different scenarios. And I think they've just done a fantastic job. I think similarly, I focus a lot on purpose-driven companies. Two that inspire me who are kind of in the same realm are Ben & Jerry's and Patagonia. I think they're incredibly clear, which is what I love about them. They're incredibly clear about what they do, what they don't do. Their purpose drives everything. And I heard somebody from Ben & Jerry's speaking not that long ago, and I think he said, we are not in business to sell ice cream. He said we're in business to drive our purpose, and that in fact helps us sell ice cream. And so, I just think them, and there's so many great brands. I tried to dial in for as much as Fernando's as I could. I just think Burger King is brilliant.
He's amazing. Some of the things I probably interviewed him 3 times. I think once in Cannes, which is another trip I missed, by the way. But yeah, and listen, some of those in-store promotions they have are just brilliant.
Brilliant. What they've done in diversity and those sorts of things. The only one that I would really highlight as well is Microsoft. I think they've done a brilliant job from an accessibility perspective. We at TD are very focused, obviously, on diversity and inclusion, and we have a big focus on individuals with disabilities. I think they are so far forward in terms of how what they do internally with accessibility, but then how they build that into everything that they do, and really start there from the customer experience, and so they know that they're improving the experience for everyone. I just think they're brilliant in that space.
Yeah, we were talking today, if you were going to distribute something as important as a vaccine, don't you think you should have called Amazon? Because it's amazing how they can get stuff to you. Then like you order dog food Chewy, and before you hang up the phone, the Amazon truck's at your door with the Chewy stuff. So like I was thinking, boy, but they could get the vaccine out pretty quick. So I was thinking,
it's so true, right? Distribution and logistics have changed dramatically. Yet we need to get that right quickly. So you're so right though.
I would have called them up. Yes. Lauren, are we running out of time?
Sadly, yes. Sadly,
I didn't even talk about the fact that Tyrrell runs. How many marathons have you been in?
So I've done probably 15 marathons in my life, loads and loads of half marathons. What inspires me though is, and I'm not fast. I can plod my way through marathons. But what really inspires me, I am on the board of an organization called Achilles International, and I run with people with disabilities, who are way faster, way better. I actually can't run with some of them anymore because they now outpace me, and I don't want to leave them behind or